thank you all for being here tonight. This round of CHUCC Talks, these 3 questions, have been on my mind for some time. I have a almost 14-year-old son who is doing some deep soul work, as well as pushing hard against his mama, and has decided he's an atheist. But I think he's not alone. You know, it's kind of funny, but me being a pastor and all that, but he's not alone in that. And there's a growing movement of atheism and people really questioning, why do we participate in religion at all? And, you know, we don't need to. Why are we doing this? And so there's that influence on our culture. And then there's this other influence on our culture that are people who are turning towards more conservative, more fundamentalism. And both of these groups look at folks like us who are in a liberal progressive church and say, what are you doing? What do you believe in? Why are you even doing this? And so this is an attempt to start that conversation. Why are we doing this? Why does it matter? Why is it important? So these 3 questions, why have a spiritual practice? Why be a Christian? Why join the UCC? Is kind of an introduction into those questions. I'm also hoping to maybe translate this into some confirmation work with the teenagers, addressing some of the questions that they have, and you know, modern questions that they have about why even bother to be a religious or a spiritual person. And I know there's a difference between those 2 things, but today we're going to talk about why have a spiritual practice? Why is it important to acknowledge the human capacity for being spiritual? And so I'm going to share the screen. Cross your fingers. I'm going to share the screen because I have this beautiful presentation. Let's see, we're going to start. Oh, and so I'll give this presentation and then we'll do some breakout room work and then come together as a group as well. Okay. Tell me if it's not working, okay, Sue?
It's not working yet.
How's that?
Nope.
No? Okay, I'll try it again. How's that?
Okay, you started to share.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So here's our CHUCC Talks. Why be spiritual? Why be Christian? Why be UCC? And thank you to Sue's husband who made this beautiful logo. It's perfect. Now let's see. Here we go. The power of spirit. Why have a spiritual practice? And what is a spiritual practice? Those are the 2 questions we're going to look at tonight. So this is not a talk about why we should choose one spiritual practice over another. It's not about a specific religion like Christianity, like what we practice, but it is a general talk about the fact that humans are spiritual beings and why should we bother at all, and what's the use of acknowledging a spiritual practice beyond or religion, beyond just creating community. You know, what is what benefit is it for the rest of us? So this is my first slide here. This is a grave that was found in Russia. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong. Sungir, Russia. And it's a grave that is 34,000 years old. There were 2 boys and a middle-aged man who were buried in this grave, and they were buried in a very fantastic style. They were laid to rest wearing over 13,000 mammoth teeth. And the scientists, the archaeologists that dug it up believe that it probably took over 2,500 hours to create. So obviously there was care, there was time and attention put into this burial, something beyond either, you know, we don't know what they believed, but there was certainly a practice of caring for their dead and being and knowing that something had finished and possibly something else will start with graves like this. And so humans, this is like some of the first earliest examples of humans knowing that something is, or hoping or wondering or believing that there's something more that comes after death. Before this, they're like between 40,000 years ago and 130,000 years ago, there are other burial sites where it's very obvious that the deceased had been placed with intention, and all of these graves are the same. So there's evidence of ritual throughout Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, all of it. And so, and there's even evidence that our Neanderthal cousins had, who practiced intentional burials as well. And even before this, there is evidence that over 400,000 years ago, there may have been some intentional sites where bodies were laid to rest in what we call mass graves. But 400,000 years ago, we weren't human quite yet. And so I'm taking this as evidence that it comes even before we were human, this need to acknowledge something greater than ourselves, something that happens after death, something that is more than just this life. So you might recognize this. This is Ayers Rock, or I probably will pronounce this wrong. Uluru Rock is how the Aborigines speak of it. It's a rock that's in the middle of Australia and has been a holy site for over 60,000 years. People have come here to have spiritual experience. In fact, the Aboriginal people of Australia have the oldest continuous culture in the entire world, over 60,000 years of continuous culture. And they have been developing their ideas around spirituality for that long, which is a long, long time to develop it. They have not, oh, I missed a slide. I'm gonna go back because it's a cool one. There we go. They have not outgrown spirituality. They have grown into it and developed it. And here's a more modern day painting of the dream time. The dreaming is what the name that they give to their sense of spirit, their sense of what is beyond just the physical idea of a way of being. 60,000 years of continuous civilization. It's a lot. Okay, and I have one more picture because I find this fascinating also, and I'll probably pronounce this wrong as also. It's Göbekli Tepe. And this one they found they think is 10,000 is from 10,000 BCE, so about 12,000 years old. This ancient temple, and scientists are still working on what exactly happened here. But interestingly enough, not far from this site is one of the first agricultural sites, the intentional planting of grains. So the question is, did they plant those so that they could build the temple? Did they build the temple because they were so happy about the farming? Did they there's evidence too that before people actually grew plants to eat, they were fermenting them. Did they like party and have this temple and have this great spiritual experience because they were getting high? These are the questions that we can't really answer, but it's clear that, from 400,000 years ago, up through the ages, people, these sites worshiping something bigger than themselves, acknowledging that, has been an integral part of the human experience. Okay. Oh, and then we have here this example from North America. This is a Lakota medicine wheel, a very simple one. And you can see here that one way of interpreting this medicine wheel is spirit, emotions, body, and mind, are these four aspects of being human. In fact, there's you guys, some of you may have come to this presentation last year with Sal Gancarelli, who is the inheritor of a Lakota medicine man tradition. And he speaks about the Lakota people used to, and they still do, up until now, until this day, believe that all humans have these 4 aspects of them, and everyone is expected to have a medicine plant and a medicine animal that helps a person focus and move through their life. That being a spiritual person is just a regular part of human life. It's not an exceptional thing. It's not an option. So, Native American civilization is over 10,000, some say 30,000 years old, and that wisdom has come to us down through the ages. So I just put this up here because I wanted to address what I sometimes hear from people who are atheists, or own that part of them, or who are just even questioning religion and why would you need it, is that maybe it's something that we outgrow. It's something that we need as a younger people, or more immature, if you're going to be patronizing person, and that the smart person will outgrow this. And besides being patronizing, my retort to that is that, yes, I do think that there are stages of development, just like there are stages of development for our emotions, our physical selves, and our intellect. These are ways of being intelligent. There are ways that develop and change over time, but also our spirituality changes also. And if you look at, this is just one example of child development. We go from infancy to early childhood, preschool, school age, adolescent, young adult, middle age, and maturity. But as we all know, as we grow and change, it doesn't stop just because you reach physical maturity. It doesn't stop because you've gotten some fancy degree. It doesn't stop because you feel like you have some emotional intelligence. All of that can always be deepened. You can always grow, and we know that. We can always strive for more, and you always have to find a balance between, pushing too hard and enjoying your life as well. But your spiritual development has that same growth potential as well. Let's see. So let's see, what's my question? And I would argue that without, just as that you could see in that Lakota medicine wheel, without the spiritual component, we're missing a whole section of the human experience. We're missing what it means to be a whole person. Okay. So here is, what's his name? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And even in this kind of secular way of looking at things, once you get your physiological needs met, your safety needs met, your social needs met, and your esteem needs met, then there is this potential for self-actualization. And one could argue that that is the place where we really start delving into what spiritual and being spiritual and connecting with something greater than ourselves. And another system that I'm particularly interested in these days is called spiral dynamics. And this is another way of showing human development or human change over time, that when we're born, we're in this kind of survival mode, and then we outgrow it. We start growing in intellect and emotions and our physicality, and then we grow into a need for security, and then in our adolescence we need to break out and seek out challenges in our lives, and eventually we like to have a more secure order to our lives. And the next one, called success, is kind of the people who are really ambitious, can be described in that way of thinking. And then there's the next way of thinking, which I think in the UCC, we would call it more of a social justice minded, realizing that the world is bigger than ourselves and trying to show love and kindness to everyone. The next stage after that is a more expansive, realizing that all of these stages of development are important, and kind of looking inward at that and looking at yourself and seeing how all of those forms of development are important. And then the next stage is bringing that out into the world and kind of applying all of that into a group level. These are not only individual developmental stages, but their worldviews, like groups of people, can be found along this spiral as well. And I found this really useful in the Trump era, because people, we were all kind of dumbfounded, like, how can somebody follow someone who seems so belligerent? And that's because he was, if you're going to follow the spiral dynamics way of thinking, he was stuck in the red part of this spiral and hadn't yet moved out of that. But each stage requires stress and a realization that your old way of thinking doesn't work anymore. And so that's when you would move to a different way of thinking. So anyway, so kind of going back in time again, here is a chakra system. I think probably all of you have heard of chakras before, or at least they're energy centers in the body. And this system is very, very old. It's from the Upanishads and the Vedas, which are ancient Hindu scriptures. And they were first written down about 1500 BCE or so, depending on who you talk to. But that's when they were first written down. The oral tradition, who knows how long they have been around. In fact, in the Upanishads and the Vedas, there's the last ice age is referenced, and the Ganges River was flowing, and it's in a different direction, almost a different angle. So they've been around for a very, very long time. And this also shows, they are places in the body, actual physical places in the body that correspond to different endocrine systems. And they're also used as showing human development also, that when our energies are at the root chakra, we're more concerned about survival. And then the next one, the orange one, is about emotions. And then the yellow one is energy. The green one is about your heart and love and connections. The blue one is about speaking, clear speaking. And then the blue-purple one is about clear seeing. And then the final one is when we move our energy up here, we're connected to what's greater than ourselves, to the oneness, to the divine. So this, again, is an ancient system of looking at that actually corresponds to physical places in your body. And actually, in present day scientific discoveries, there's actual lymph nodes and nerve bundles that correspond to these chakras. So there's a physical reality to them too, that our modern day science have found. Those yogis kind of knew what they were doing. All right, and I put this in here because this is, you might recognize it, are the 7 days of creation. And they correspond to the 7 chakras. Somebody corresponded these to the 7 chakras, which I thought was interesting. Incidentally, the book of Genesis was also written about 1400, 1500 BCE. And that was when it was written down. That's what tradition tells us. Some say earlier, but also it's an oral tradition. So we don't know how long these stories have been around. And the book of Genesis, in the beginning, I'm going to check the time here. It starts with, I'm just going to read it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. So the very first thing that God does in Genesis is to create light and darkness, and to separate them, causing a kind of dualism, right? Light and dark, you and me, far and near. In Godly Plague, we call these the differences that people realized when they were in the Garden of Eden, that there were differences and that our eyes were opened. But God makes these differences and they're good. That's what we're taught in the book of Genesis, this ancient wisdom. So my interpretation, and this is my interpretation because I am a Christian and I wrestle with these scriptures, is that the ultimate task of humanity, thinking also to, all of these other ancient systems and all of these other ancient spiritual practices, that the idea is to remember, is to hold the fact that we live in the material world that has us and them, has the differences, has the separation, and to remember that we all come from light, that in the beginning, it all was together. So to hold those two realities together, that we know and that we have an understanding of what those are, and that they are so different, and that's a paradox to hold them. But to be able to hold them together is the ultimate expression of what it means to be a human being. So that's great and all, but what does that mean in modern day language? I mean, the Upanishads talk about it, this ancient Genesis Hebrew text talks about it, but why should we concern ourselves about that? Here's God creating earth and holding it, the light in earth. I thought that was a beautiful picture. Okay, so here's our sweet Einstein, and I've never seen this picture of him laughing, and it's probably one of my favorite pictures now of him. What does that mean for us in this time and this place that we're in, this scientific age where all of religion, all of the wisdom from our past 400,000 years of being hominids, calling all of that into question, which is, ultimately is a good thing. Here is an example of how we can use science to support a spiritual practice. E equals mc squared. And I don't know if you can see that. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So in other words, we are energy, we are light that has been slowed down, all the way down. We have slowed it and slowed it and slowed it to a point where it looks like it's solid. But any good scientist will tell you that the space between our atoms, there's nothing there. There's actually nothing there. We are actually, mostly nothing, made of nothing. And if that doesn't make you a spiritual person, I don't know what would. But in order to actually physically touch something, you would have to merge your fingers together. Even though I'm touching my fingers together, it's more like they're repelling each other. That's what I'm actually feeling. My children think that that's a delightful reality, and so do I. So Einstein, one of the ultimate scientists here, shows us that we are made of energy. But to remember that, when faced with the solid reality of what we are, I am sitting in this chair. I'm not going to fall through it. I mean, I suppose there might be a 1 in Google chance that the atoms might shift and I might fall through the chair, but probably not. Never heard of anybody experiencing that. So here is our scientist who has proved that we are actually light that has slowed down. This woman, can you all see that? Can you see the whole slide? I don't know, whoops. Jill Bolte Taylor, some of you may have heard her TED Talk. She gave a TED Talk a number of years ago. Her TED Talk was one of the first to go viral, one of the most famous TED Talks. And she she's a neuroscientist. She studies the brain and the spinal cord. And she was in her 30s and had a massive stroke in the left side of her brain. And, so here's this neuroscientist who was watching herself lose all cognitive function in her from the left side of her brain, and which was both horrifying and fascinating to her. And then she watched herself as she regained all of that, as her brain healed from that. And it took 8 years, 8 very long years for her to heal from that. She wrote this book, Whole Brain Living, which I highly recommend if you want to know more about how the brain works and how it relates to spirituality in a scientific way. So here's the right side of our brain. And it's a good picture of, you can see the brain stem as well as the, I don't know all the names of it, all the rest of the brain. And the brain stem, this is what she says in her book, is the lizard part of our brain. It's the earliest part of our brain. Before we were hominids, we had the brain stem. It's instinct. It's why we don't have to think about our hearts. It's why we don't have to think about breathing. We don't have to think about breathing, but we can. We don't have to, it's the fight, flight, or freeze. That's where that comes from. Lizard brain is good. We're glad that we have lizard brain, because I don't know about you, but I would forget to beat my heart, and then I would have problems. So yay for lizard brain. But at some point, evolution put enough stress, or Mother Nature put enough stress on that lizard brain, and it became necessary to have an emotional part to our way of being, that the emotions became something that was important. And so then we developed this emotional part of our brain, and it does have 2 parts to it. It has the left side of the emotions and the right side. And the left side of our emotional brain does things like remember past experiences. This is the part of us that remembers the past and compares it to what's happening now and thinks about what's going to happen in the future. It's the part of us that may have been hurt in the past and sees some kind of something like that happening now and just knows that it's going to happen again. And it's hard for that part of our brain to live in present time, because that mechanism can save us from poisonous plants or dangerous animals, because we can remember that experience. It can also help us be judgmental, like I don't want to experience these bad feelings again, so I'm going to do something to either protect myself or get the heck out. And then the right side of our emotional brain actually has a different function. The right side of our emotional brain does things like it wants the next adrenaline rush. So it's kind of like, hey, what's that? Hey, what's that? Ooh, that looks good. The left side of your brain says, no, danger. The right side of your brain says, ooh, fun, like that. And then the humans evolved one more brain on top of that. And that's like the thinking executive function. And the left side of our brain is the part of our brain that likes little white boxes, all neat and tidy. It's the part of our brain that knows how to tie our shoe and that you have to put your pants on before your shoes. It's the type A personality. It's the part that likes to do and get things done and check boxes off and is very likes lists and stuff. And the right side of our thinking brain is the part of our brain that knows beyond doubt that we are one with everything. And she says that living without the left side of her brain, without the part that could remember the past and be judgmental about the future, without the part that had the lists and the ambition and the ability to tie your shoes, living without that for years on end, Jill says, was bliss. It was bliss, because constantly she knew that she was one with everything. So that means that half of our brain, half of our existence, half of our the organ that organizes our whole being knows that we are light, that knows that we are one with everything. So how do we develop that? How do we live into that reality? Here's this graphic that kind of shows the 4 parts of the brain, although the feeling self and the experimental self are kind of switched. But it doesn't matter. That these two, it shows the left and the right side of the brain, kind of gives some more information about that. Jill's book is about how to integrate all 4 parts of those brains. And she says, we are not thinking creatures that have emotions. We are emotional creatures that think, and that we do best when we can use all 4 parts of our brain together. But it takes intention, because we don't necessarily do that automatically. And she proposes that that is our next stage of evolution, is being able to use our whole brain at one time. So how do you do that? How do you figure out how to use your whole brain at one time? Well, one way is to meditate. Let's see. Here's some information on mindfulness meditation, why meditation is good. Mindful meditation is the practice of non-judgmental intentional awareness. It can strengthen areas of your brain responsible for memory, learning, and attention. The practice can also help calm down our sympathetic nervous system. And over time, mindfulness meditation can increase cognition, memory, and attention. It can also decrease emotional reactivity, stress, anxiety, and depression. In other words, it can integrate all 4 different parts of our brain and help us experience. I'm missing a slide that I wanted to show you. Where did it go? I'm going to hold on because it's a good one. There we go. The remarkable brainwaves of high-level meditators. These are Tibetan monks that have been meditating for 65,000 hours, a long, long time. And when they did experiments on these guys, they found that, I think it's gamma brainwaves. Gamma brainwaves are the brainwaves that we get periodically. We have all experienced them when we're like enjoying an apple, or in those wonderful moments when we realize that God is with us, you know, and you feel really good. Those gamma brainwaves, apparently that's what that is. And these guys, these meditators, are in that state almost all the time. That's what meditation can do for you. That is what whole brain living constantly does that for you. And the author, Jill, she talks about how she needs her executive functions, her first and second brains, her left brain. She needs to have them because she likes to be able to tie her own shoes and to get things done. But she much prefers to live on the right side of her brain because it's more pleasant. It makes her life better. And to have access to that whenever we need it, we need to do some kind of exercising, some kind of what we call a spiritual practice, like these Tibetan monks who meditate a lot. Let's see. Is it going to do it? Come on. Nope. All right. How much time am I got left? Okay. My computer is not doing what I want it to do. Come on. There we go. Mindfulness. So here's another picture of meditation. These are short-term benefits to just meditating. And meditating is listening to your breath, counting. There's all sorts of ways that we can meditate, listening to music. So on the short term, it relieves stress, lessens depression, lowers blood pressure, improves your sleep, boosting memories and mood, and even your social intelligence. That's short term. Long term is this ability to live in bliss, is to live in bliss. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? Here's one spiritual practice. Oh, that's kind of fuzzy. A breathing exercise, which is I would say a kind of meditation, or even it can be kind of a prayer. To inhale, 1, 2, hold it, and then breathe out slowly using your breath. Another way of having a spiritual practice is walking. Some people do walking as another way of being mindful of where you are and remembering to be in present time. And praying. Praying is also a good way to have a spiritual practice. So anyway, that I have like so much more information, but we only have an hour. And that's why I think that a spiritual practice is important. Amen. So what I'd like to do now, and I hope what it has done is to give you some information about that you can share with other people. Why even go to church? Why practice a religion? Practicing a religion is a spiritual practice. And one reason to do that is because it makes our lives better. And this presentation I told you about is why that happens. And human beings have been practicing some kind of spirituality from way, way before we were ever Homo sapiens. So it's part of what we are. It's part of what we do. So what I'd like to do now, hopefully, is to do some small group discussion. Let's see, what time is it? We can do that for maybe about 6 minutes or so. And the question is, what is your spiritual practice? What kind of spiritual practice do you have? Do you even recognize that you have one? Because I'm looking at all of you, and I'm pretty sure all of you have some kind of spiritual practice. I know you all do. What helps you remember to be in present time and to use your whole brain? So let's see. Cross your fingers. I'm going to work on this. Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 16 of us. So let's do 4 people. No. And we'll come back in about 6 minutes. Okay?
Who's in what group?
I think it should put you in a group automatically.
Okay,
Is it doing that?
thank you.
Yeah, there we go. And then some of us will stay here. Oh, it's not. Oh, there we go. Here we are. Okay, unmute yourselves.
Yeah, I don't think we're in separate rooms, or else you need to not share your screen.
I'm not sharing my screen.
I can see your thing that says breakout rooms, but you haven't broadcast the message to all.
Well, I think the other people are in a breakout room. I don't know why.
So am I in your room? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see. I'm going to have to keep track of the time here. All right. So, what's your spiritual practice? What do you think a spiritual practice is?
So I tried meditating, and I know I do better with a guided meditation, but I sometimes try just to sit.
Yeah.
And it all depends. I do better at it when I'm not feeling very happy. I just kind of want to be God, But I also, for me to sit, because we have a nice backyard and lots of birds. If I just sit in the backyard and watch the birds, I think it brings me to that time until I start redesigning the yard, and then it's all gone. But so I'm not good at a very long period of time.
And I think mine would be more, well, sort of like Sue, outside. And when I'm hiking or walking or biking or skiing or whatever it is, and sometimes you just are overcome by, I can't believe that we're in this beautiful big world place. And, whether you're plodding, it used to be when I was running and you could get that plodding along, you just get in that rhythm and or hiking or whatever. So I'm not good at sitting and meditating. I can't sit.
Yeah. I think one reason I like yoga is because it's a moving meditation, you know. Yeah, sitting is very difficult. Although I think I'm better at it than some people, but doing yoga, you know, and that concentration on the breath and putting yourself into strange and interesting poses and then breathing and trying to be where you are at the same time takes a lot of concentration. And concentrating is a form of meditation, I would say. And yeah. And the more I do it, not only do I feel better physically, like when you're hiking or whatever, but I feel, but it like clears my brain, you know, clears my, you know, I think better, I can talk better, all that stuff.
Do you still have some that are on the church website somewhere?
What's that?
Are you still doing some that are videos?
I haven't done any videos lately, but I do have plans to start doing yoga at the church again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm doing another apprenticeship, so I'm learning more about yoga, and I want to practice on you all.
You know, we're taking Tai Chi, Andrew Schwartzer's teaching, and I think it's the same thing, that you really just kind of focus on doing the lesson and the move, and there's really not a lot else. I mean, I'm still learning it, so that's part of it, but I don't think about anything.
I found when I did Tai Chi, which was 25 years ago, I found that was more meditative than yoga, because you're moving from one, and pretty soon after you practice those movements enough, you're not even thinking that you go from one to the next. It just happens. And it did feel like this meditation, this meditative thing. And I should do Tai Chi again. I like that better than yoga, frankly, for the meditative purpose. For the physical stuff, I think yoga was stretching, and that was a better, but
that's great. The yogis do say that before you can actually meditate, you have to learn how to concentrate and I don't know what the difference is, probably because I'm not a self-actualized being, but that what we do with Tai Chi or whatever, or, you know, sitting meditations, is learning how to concentrate and to focus. So for what that's worth. All right, I'm gonna welcome everybody back into thanks you guys. They're gonna close in 60 seconds. La la la, now we get to sit and right.
Do you do other things, JJ, besides the yoga?
For
like meditation?
I try to meditate every day. That's some of it's successful, some of it's not. I have a esoteric Christian practice with Christ the Healer that I go to on Thursday nights. You know, woo-woo Christianity is what we call it. And I go to church. Yeah. I love it. Five seconds and they're all going to come rushing back.
Okay.
There we go. Welcome back, everybody. Whew. I hope you all got a chance to wonder and to share with each other. Before we start talking in a large group and sharing our ideas and asking questions, I just wanted to share with you something that I read the other day. the yogis, the people who practice yoga and become self-actualized and sit in caves and, I don't know, do interesting things. They say that every night when we are asleep, in the dreamless part of our sleep, we reunite with the one, and we remember that we're one with God unequivocally. And when I read that, I thought, you know, like, this life is hard. Having a material body and moving through the world is hard. And how do we even function? Because sometimes things are really hard. And I have to believe it's because we have that experience of reuniting with God every night when we sleep. And when we don't get sleep, you know, it's hard on us. So I'd like to just open it up now. You can unmute yourselves, and if you have questions or if you'd like to share what you all talked about, I'd love to hear it.
We talked about nature and how nature is a place where many people experience the spirit more profoundly than in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about yoga and Tai Chi as helping you concentrate and helping you be really in the present.
I think for our group, we discovered that we do better with other people than by ourselves.
Mhm.
With our spiritual practices, whatever they might be.
And walking.
Social pressure at its best.
Yes.
There's something that even in our meditation group, there's something about the energy of having other people. It's different than when you're sitting in your own house by yourself. It's a different feeling or different experience. The Bible says where two or more are gathered, right?
I can't do it as long
Right.
by myself. It seems like. Of course, I'm forced to, Bev.
I make you guys sit for a long time.
Which is a good thing.
It's a good thing. We're getting better.
We're getting much better.
Any questions or comments about the presentation?
Other than the fact that it was really awesome.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Very well done.
1,000 years.
I have to, frankly, I've got to do a lot of reading because you brought in many new concepts for me. I'm gonna probably have to get the book on the brain.
It's a great book. Yeah.
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 AJ, would you type the book in the chat?
Sure.
Just so we remember what it is.
So JJ, are you comfortable sharing with us some of your spiritual practices?
Yes, let me, I would love to. I'm just gonna write the name of the author here. I call her Jill, like as if I know who she is, right? Like, although probably if you went over to her house, she would be very gracious. Where is she? Here, that's the name of the book. My spiritual practices, I try to meditate every day, which sometimes is successful, sometimes it's not. I go in waves. I do a lot of yoga, which is a moving meditation, using your breath, right? And I also have an esoteric Christian practice every Thursday night. That means woo-woo Christianity. That I do. And I meditate with Bev's group. Yeah. And I go to church, you know, like.
One thing I found really helpful in a practice is, it is a meditation practice, but it's remembering the name of God. And many traditions, that's a very important part of their spirituality is chanting or a mantra. And somehow I have been a part of a Sufi community, and the idea or the teaching is that every time you say the name of God, whatever that name is for you, you are invoking the energy of the divine into your being. And the more you do it, the more you clear those places, those energy centers, and you connect with that divine spirit. So when you're in distress, sometimes just being able to do remembering the name of God over and over can be a calming or a very helpful practice.
There's lots of ways to meditate, and that's an excellent one.
And JJ, you said sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not. My meditation teacher says you don't have to think that. It's just, you just do it.
It's all
And
good.
whatever it is, it's successful for that particular time. And what's going on in our brains, maybe it's not real peaceful. Maybe that's because your brain is not ready to be peaceful yet. So it's not unsuccessful. It's just a different thing. So, and I like to do little short meditations. I do a longer meditation in the morning, but then every once in a while when I start feeling myself getting, then I just go in our guest TV office annex room, whatever I call it, and just sit for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes.
Nice.
Maybe a whole hour.
Thank you for that, Pat. I wanted to say that what I meant by successful was whether or not I actually do it.
Do it. Yeah.
You know, like actually get myself to sit down and meditate.
To do a sitting down.
Yeah.
Well,
Last week at Vespers, Mary Sue read a poem by Rumi. Is that his name? And it has stayed with me all week, and it really, I hope I can continue, but it's greet everything that comes to you.
Yes.
Welcome it, welcome it. And I've been doing that this week. What a difference for this week has made.
well, and that's what gratitudes do for me every night. The
Mhm.
5 gratitudes, and I'm very peaceful when I go to sleep.
Yeah, maybe you're producing gamma brain waves, Eileen.
Yeah, who knows? You need
The
to
Rumi, the Rumi poem was, the first line is, "This human being is a guest house." If you want to Google it, you can find it that way.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to find the poem again, because it's easier for me to do that than the gratitudes at night, like, well, when the phone rings and I look over and see who it is, and it's like, oh, no. And I go, no, you just welcome that phone call, and it's just very helpful.
My part of my woo-woo Christian practice, my esoteric Christian practice, is we pray and meditate on loving what is, and that's what you reminded me of. What you were talking about, Marilyn, is accepting the day the way it is, and loving where it is now, instead of trying to make it into something that it is or is not. And that actually is a kind of forgiveness practice as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way of not getting sucked into some of the stress of worrying about whatever, the climate or the politics or what I'm going to cook for dinner, is to welcome, to just appreciate what is. That's a hard step.
It is.
But a good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to get out of your left brain
Yes.
in order to do that.
John Kabat-Zinn says you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf.
You can what? What
Not
was
me,
that,
but
Pat?
many people can.
I might not.
Pat, could you repeat that again, please? Because I couldn't hear the whole thing.
We can't stop the waves, but we
Yes.
can learn to what do we call it?
Learn to surf.
To surf.
Oh, to surf. I thought you said to search, and I thought, well, that's not it.
No, surf.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we have just a few more minutes. Does anybody have anything else that they thought of during the presentation? Any ahas, any arguments? Anything like that? Any suggestions? I'd love to hear those too.
There's a really good YouTube channel called Meditative Mind.
Uh-huh.
And it's different. There's tons and tons of different music, but some of them are sound vibrations that affect the brain, that cause relaxation and healing. You can go through there, and like I put one on the other day, just left it in the background, and I found my whole afternoon it was one of those hot days, and I felt so peaceful and comfortable even, and just with that music kind of playing in the background.
What was that site?
It's called Meditative Mind, and it's on YouTube, and they're beautiful pictures. I get it on my TV, but they're beautiful pictures, and then different sound vibrational hertz that do different things to your body and mind. They're healing, relaxing, whatever.
Yeah, Bev, there's one, I can't remember the name of it, but like the sound waves are slightly disjointed with each other. And it really takes, well, it takes me someplace, but it's got a name, it's bookmarked. I can't remember the name. I'm guessing that's on that side of yours.
Could be.
It's very cool, and I've forgotten about it. Thank you.
There's another one too that's, we listen to him in meditation, and his name is Jonathan Faust, and he is a yoga teacher, but he does talks on YouTube that are very, very good. I mean, he touches these areas of spirituality, relaxation, energy, all of that. So if you ever want to just learn something new, go listen to Jonathan, and he does a little guided meditation sometimes.
JJ, before we close, do you want to talk about the next two sessions, what they're going to cover?
Me?
You or Mary Sue? Mary Sue probably can talk about the next
Yeah, Mary
one.
Sue's going to do the next one. Do you want to talk about that?
Next
Mary
one is why be Christian? And you know, that's going to be an interesting one. Because, well, you know why. And I hope that by the end of it, you'll have an opportunity to think through what your elevator speech might be when somebody asks you, oh, you're Christian? Why? That you might come up with a way to have a short, succinct explanation why. And then the one after that, Pat?
YBUCC, I'm going to talk about the way the church developed and the way it came together as hoping to be a uniting force when many churches were breaking up and becoming smaller denominations, and all the things that, as many as we can crowd in, that the UCC has done and been and stood for.